All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. My guests are back with me, Dr. Kuru Court, Third Way Alliance Party leader, and Professor Kivutha Kibwana, former governor for Makueni. Asante sana for making time. Let's talk about the impeachment of the deputy president, and I'll start with you, Dr. Kuru. Having seen the charges under which he's being accused of, do they meet the threshold of gross violation? And is this a matter of holding him to account, or is it just political revantism where everybody's just trying to settle scores?
You know, let me use an example of a charge saying that he undermines the president, he undermines devolution, he has formed 21 companies, he has made so much money. On the face of it, this is political lynching. Because if you are just to replace the name Gachagua with, say, William Ruto and many of the politicians, you know, you probably, the list will even be longer. Because tribal mobilization, in fact, what the effect of this impeachment is actually it has enhanced tribal mobilization. Because now the people of Murima are saying, oh, they're picking one of our own. Yet, when we were campaigning, we're actually saying, who do we bring on board to bring us a vote, a block vote from that region? Talking about tribe. Except perhaps for people, even the members of parliament in the cosmopolitan areas in Kenya, you will say, okay, maybe they enjoy a vote from across the board. But if you go to the rural constituencies, for example, it is pure tribal mobilization. Now, what is tribal mobilization? Did Gachagua mobilize? I don't know. I don't even seem to remember him mobilizing the region, or for what purpose? Is it to cause war, to cause anarchy, you know, to cause conflict? So if you ask me, the parliament is outrightly biased. It lacks credibility, in my view, and it has ignored public views. Okay. Because you saw what happened on the ground. The people are basically saying that, no, kufa dereva, kufa makanga, pamoja na mechanic. I don't know what the mechanic is, but I'm told it's the handshake expert. So parliament is an appendage of the executive. Because now we know that members of parliament were actually bribed, you know, to say, and we have seen a confession from one member of parliament from Central Limit where he says they were actually promised. Now he's backtracking, saying that promise has now been betrayed because the conversation is not going towards Kindiki Kithure, which really lacks any sort of, threshold in the Constitution. So if I look at the whole process up to where we are at the Senate, the process is actually flawed. And Kenyans are against this anyway. Kenyans are saying, no, give us something better. Is Gachagua really the only... I'm not holding any brief for Gachagua, but I'm just saying these charges do not make sense, and for me, they don't meet the threshold in the Constitution under Article 150.
Okay, but Prof, is this where our problem lies? Because Kuru says it doesn't meet the threshold under Article 150. I'm looking at Article 150 here. 2 says, yes, there's on ground of gross violation, but number 2 says, where there is a serious reason to believe that the deputy president has committed a crime under national or international law. That term "to believe" is a rather subjective term. Is that where our problem is as a country?
That committed a crime under national, international law.
But it is to believe.
Yes.
The wording is where there's reason to believe. Is that where the problem is, Prof? Because anybody can believe anything at any given point. There's no threshold to that.
I think part of the problem, and of course I wanted to talk more about impeachment of governors, and not at this other level, because I was myself impeached and survived. But I think when you look particularly at the Wombora case, because there they went into details, the courts, in terms of saying what are the real grounds. And they talked about Article 10, which is the article about national values and principles. They talked about Chapter 6, which is the integrity chapter. They talked about persistent violation of constitutional articles, like you keep on violating, or any law. And they also talked about the penal code provisions about treason, if like you are doing things which go towards treason. And actually there they listed, you know, all the articles in the Constitution that would fall under now that particular article. But I think people also would expect that because an impeachment proceeding terminates you politically, you cannot now hold public office. It would be expected that one would first of all go for criminal charges. Like, so that you say, okay, if there are things we believe you have done which contradict, criminal laws of the country, then that is the first step. The way they did for Moses, Samburu, they did for Bado, even Waititu, they tried to do that initially. So that there is that aspect.
Yeah.
And then you can say that the matter which has been done is so serious that it should be taken to for impeachment proceedings. And actually, there is something that former Speaker Justin Muturi, during the 11th Parliament, I think 2015 or so, he actually came up with what are the things that are expected for impeachment. And I think when one looks at the document, which was a 15-page document from Muturi, you'll see that he actually said that the threshold must be extremely high, and he did not want to simply recourse to the standing orders, because those provide the procedure. But in terms of the substance, he went into what were the courts saying in terms of now, what is the interpretation of the impeachment article. And that is why in places like USA, where we have borrowed, substantially our constitution from 1843, they actually have not done a successful impeachment, because whether it is Andrew Johnson, whether it is Bill Clinton, whether it is Donald Trump twice, 2019, 2021, whether it was somebody called John Taylor, whether it was even Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon and Taylor, they stepped out before being impeached. But these others, it was not successful. So that tells one, a country where they have a constitution from late 18th century, it says that this is something that is special. And maybe, just to conclude, to say, when you do an impeachment, you are saying that the National Assembly and Senate are going to reverse what the people voted. So for you to achieve that, it means that it is a serious matter. And although the Constitution says what you need to do, but you must have at your back of your mind that you're not just impeaching one person, you are also dealing with the people who voted for this person, and therefore you must convince them that the reasons are weighty enough and that there is no politics involved and so on. But obviously, if somebody has done the things that the Constitution says deserve impeachment, then one cannot say they shouldn't be impeached. But I think even in the United States, where the president and the vice president there, they work so closely, and they have therefore developed a convention that you just can't impeach because, for example, the president wants another vice president. You can't simply now instigate impeachment so that you now get your choice of a secondary vice president. And there they have a convention of working together peacefully, and even the vice president usually succeeding the president, like now Kamala and Biden. So one must insist that when there are good grounds, one can be impeached because the Constitution says so. But of course, there isn't the ordinary law to support the constitutional provisions. And actually, Muturi was able to say that there should be that committee of Senate, and this is something we're discussing with the Kuru, that the matter should ordinarily be introduced before that committee, so that that committee choose the matter and then has a report, brings the report to Parliament. But in this instance, it was decided that Senate should try without that pre-trial by the special committee. And of course, Senate can do that. But ordinarily, Muturi was suggesting that it is safer if that Senate committee first of all, choose the matter, then brings a report, so that people don't simply vote without a lot of thought involved in the...
Do you think there was a lot of thought that went into the voting?
No.
At the National Assembly,
yes.
At the National Assembly level. Well, I don't want to go into the minds of those who are voting because, you know, but if some of them are already beginning, like there was somebody who wanted to
withdraw
their signature.
Yes.
There was another, and then there's another one who thought that so-and-so would be made the, you know.
There's even another one right now. Let's listen to what he had to say. Kirima from Central Imenti, this is what he had to say. Let's listen to what he said about this impeachment.
We believed as Meru MPs that number 2 is supposed to take that place of number 1. So we signed on strength that Kindiki is going to be appointed as NDP. But from the time we passed that impeachment, things are not as they were. There is a lot of lobbying from various sectors of societies. A number of tribes, communities are lobbying to have their own to be number 2.
Prof, when you hear a member of parliament saying that we were voting on the basis that so-and-so would then become the deputy president, but now we can hear people jostling for this position, what does that say to you? Was this accountability or political vengeance?
First of all, a member of parliament who says they voted because of such a promise, they should themselves be disciplined by parliament. Because that is really, it means that you don't vote due to your conscience or because of your conscience. There are these other extraneous, and sometimes, you know, we hear people get some money and they vote in a particular way and so on and so forth. And we must ask of our parliament to really take these national issues very seriously so that they reflect upon them, they think about them, because they are sent there to represent us, so that they really do that. And parliament, it has been said that it's a weak link in the democracy chain. Actually, the judiciary tries quite a bit. And of course, the executive, like happens in most of African countries, wants to dominate, which shouldn't be the case. And I think what is even you know, very critical is the earlier impeachments, like when we were subjected to impeachments with Aken Wambora and Sonko, Waititu, and so on. That time, there wasn't a lot of focus on public participation. These days, the Supreme Court has developed jurisprudence to the extent that public participation is very critical, and particularly in this instance where you are negating the vote of the people. So I think those are the things that Parliament should be thinking about and considering, and not really saying that we thought that we just remove this guy and our guy comes in. That's very unfortunate.
Guru.
You know, for me, Trevor, I think unfortunately parliamentarians have not placed the weight on the importance of the office of the deputy president. And let me just take Kenyans back to during election time. You see, during election time, and here I want to explain by citing Article 139 of the Constitution of Kenya, that is refers to death before assuming office. Now, if a president dies before assuming office, even once they have been cleared, you know the election is cancelled. That's how weighty these offices are. The same way, if a deputy president dies before assuming office, the election is cancelled. So that's how important this office is. We should not play around with it by saying that we were promised, you know, so that our person can get in. Further than that, if you go to the functions of the deputy president, the Constitution says he shall deputize for the president in the execution of the president's functions. So it's not a decoration in our Constitution that we use such mandatory terms. So this office should not be trivialized, should not be politicized the way parliamentarians are doing it. You saw members of the public saying they voted one ticket. And that's why even the president himself does a lot of calculation, Prof, that who should I appoint as my deputy for purposes of me winning? So which means he also put in a lot of weight into this office. Now, we should also take this office very serious. Like Prof has said, honestly, the threshold should be very high because of the importance of this office, because it also goes back to the will of the people of Kenya. It's about the Constitution, which is the will of the people of Kenya. So we cannot just play around with it, that, you know, play politics with it. Like Prof has said, you asked the question, was there any thinking that went into the vote? I would say absolutely zero thinking. Because you had somebody who votes and then realizes, no, I want to take back my vote. That's a joker, because he ought to have really considered, he ought to have even read these provisions of the Constitution and say, I'm going to vote this way. Yeah. So this impeachment process, in my view, is actually a mockery of our Constitution. And I'm really hoping that the Deputy President's lawyers will quote Article 258 of the Constitution to say that the Constitution is about to be violated. Yeah? There is to be contravened. And I think that is very important, so I will preserve the importance of this Constitution. Okay. And I hope they also speak to Article 22(1) that talks about, the protection of human rights, and that refers to national values and principles of governance, and Article 10. Yeah. That is how important we should hold this office. Not to say that we're excusing if Deputy President Gachagua committed any crimes, as we say, because looking at some of those charges, honestly, how does one individual undermine devolution? How does one individual withdraw billions of Kenyan shillings, as they say? Because we should have seen at least our PS leave office on account of that allegation, because we know that, I don't know where he got the money from, because we are not even told. Is it from Treasury directly? Is it from Central Bank directly? Or is it from a ministry? If it's from a ministry, there is an accounting officer in that ministry who must have given Gachagua this money. These are things that they ought to have interrogated. And like Prof said, it would have been important for Senate to say that once this motion was seconded, and of course the whole thing was choreographed, if you ask me, because the mover of the motion in Senate must have spoken to Senator Sifuna to tell Sifuna, I would like you to second this motion. And maybe Sifuna may have said, okay, I will second it. Because had Sifuna declined to second the motion, he could have looked for somebody else who will have seconded it. So that now we go to that select committee that will interrogate the charges against Gachagua, come up with a report and present it before Senate. But the whole thing, as you can see, is choreographed, which is why we are saying in summary, I am saying in summary, this is just political lynching, and it is undermining our Constitution. Okay,
but there's also something, and Prof, you've raised it a bit here, the Deputy President himself talked about it during the church service. Listen to what he had to say.
Kama tawezekana tulichaguliwa na hii watu yote, tufukuzwe na watu wachache. Hiyo ni haki kweli, watu wa Embu? Kwa hivyo watu wa Embu mlichagua mimi na President William Ruto, mkatupatia kura zenu zote. Tungeuliza uamuzi wa raia uheshimike. Kwa sababu raia wanapiga kura miaka 5. Na ni mzuri kuheshimu uamuzi wa nini?
Prof, is that a valid concern? Well, elected by over 7 million but impeached by just 281.
Well, you see, the Constitution says you can be impeached following the Constitution. And it doesn't say that we have to go back to 7.2 million people. So that is actually a matter of the design of the Constitution. But this is why I stressed that the public participation that must attend an impeachment process must clearly show that the majority of Kenyans, many Kenyans from every, even ward, let alone sub-county or constituency, you can show that they are really disturbed by things that the vice president, the deputy president, or the president, if it is the president who is to be impeached, they have done. So he of course, is politicizing it because as a political animal, he wants to survive. But I think what he's trying to say is there needs to be a very thorough, robust public participation, and that actually beyond even when we are doing like a law, a policy, and so on. It's a higher threshold. But you see, I think Gachagua, perhaps, even when he was being chosen as vice or as deputy president, he was not really the person that the president may have wanted to choose. Maybe he had somebody else that he wanted, maybe Kindiki.
He said he only got one vote.
Maybe, you know, Kindiki. And so maybe the president is revisiting, you know, he's revisiting that particular issue.
Yeah.
And, you know, he wants to make other configuration for 2027. And so Gachagua gets into a problem. And maybe one of the crimes that Gachagua may have done is he may not have understood his president, because his president doesn't, as I watch him, doesn't like this person who is very strong-willed, who you know, wants to say, you know, President, what about this? Can you correct this? And so on. So, you know, he makes the president uncomfortable. And that's why even going forward, whether Senate saves him, whether the court save him, there will be the question: what will be their relationship? That you know. So there they will have to sit down. I don't know if it happens that he saved.
Yeah.
And then they will have to get people to mediate and so on. But I made a pause to say that we need to make some conventions, like conventions of a president and a deputy president, having a good relationship so that the country is stable. Just like up to now, when a president leaves office, we don't hound them, you know, although, of course, there are questions of what did you do, and those are valid questions. And even as a deputy president, what is it that you have done? And as a president and so on, rule of law, you know, constitutionalism and so on. But there are things you can do, like 2007-8, what happened, and you destabilize us, and it's very costly. Yeah. So those are things that we must have at the back of our mind. But I think we have said that if somebody has done wrong things, they shouldn't be excused.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of our political people have done many things that are not right.
Do you think this move can destabilize the nation politically if it goes through to the Senate?
You see, I don't know what my colleague here will say, because I'm now even veering towards, I said I wanted to talk about governance.
But you know, Prof, let's not shy away from just being brutally honest about. Yes, in my view, I think it will destabilize the country because there's a whole region now that is so dissatisfied. In fact, yesterday, if you read news yesterday, the president even shied away from going to Embu, and people are now telling him point blank that don't come. You know, people are shouting at him. So you can imagine now something of this magnitude that you impeach your ticketman. But the fundamental question, in my view, is what really went wrong between these two individuals? And for me, it speaks to the political conmanship character of our country. That you lie to people that, you know, we are friends, you know, just, you know, it's reminiscent of now President William Ruto, and then as deputy with Uhuru Kenyatta, where they were even wearing identical shirts and ties in the first term. Yeah. Then in the second term, hell broke loose. So you wonder why. But it is the people of Kenya who are being subjected. And I say that deliberately, Trevor, because now the country is preoccupied with this impeachment, which for me, I still insist, does not meet the threshold, is completely unnecessary. They are not disclosing to us what went wrong between the two of them. It's diversionary because we have got more serious issues. We have got the Adanis, the JKIA, the health, the crisis in the health sector, education, and all that. The things that Kenyans actually yearning about that will bring integrity and dignity in our country. The promises of 2022, nobody's talking about them anymore. Now we're talking about an impeachment motion, which for me is predicated on very wishy-washy grounds. Yeah. So that for me is what I think is very wrong with our politics. That you lie to the people that we are a team, we are going to deliver together, but then even before you deliver, you're already fighting. And by next year, nothing will be happening in terms of development, whether we build dams or roads or create jobs. It will be campaigned towards 2027. Okay. That is how the people are left on their own. Okay. And it's brewing some anger on the ground. And that is the crisis we're trying to see whether we can actually avoid. Because this politicking is now angering people. I mean, people can lie to you, Trevor, but The truth for the matter is this impeachment, in a way, has united the Watu wa Murima. You know, and many other Kenyans as well. I mean, if you follow the debates, many other Kenyans are also saying, is this really necessary at this time? What went wrong? What did you do to each other?
Yeah.
And in any case, now people are saying, these people are all pretentious. President Moi and Gachagua all carry Bibles. Their wives, one of their wives is a pastor, the other, you know. Why can't they sit as Christians and say, you know, you've wronged me?
Yeah.
You know, can we forgive each other? So it's even now bringing out the false Christianity that is being propagated before our very faces every other day.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. And Prof, so how then can this system of accountability be strengthened? Even if you're talking about the impeachment of the governors, because the impeachment fever is here now. So Governor Mutai just survived his. The Deputy President will be facing the Senate. That is if the High Court doesn't stop the impeachment process. How can this be made so watertight that then nobody feels disgruntled at the end? People see that this was an accountability platform, even when it comes to the governors, because there's still that perception that people can be given money. There might be bribes. There might be word from above that this is what we do. How do you strengthen that system?
Okay. Maybe because my brother has accused me of wanting to run away from a previous question. This morning, Trevor, I went to Nyandarua. Yeah. I was giving some talk on purpose-driven life to the county assembly. And on my way, I didn't know where the county assembly was. So I asked a young guy, you know, where is the county assembly? And then he recognized me. And then, you know, he asked me, where is the Bururi? You know, where is the community, the society? Meaning, you know, where are they? Because they are confused. Yeah. He says, we were told to do this and we did this, but now we are not seeing the results. Meaning that, Bururi, meaning that there is that community which is really disoriented. And, you know, actually, and this is some young fellow, you know, he said he wanted some chai and I had to part with 200 shillings. Because we had a long discussion. But he even said, if we voted for the president and now he has decided to leave us alone, these other people who think when they help him to get the vote again, he will not leave again. And this is a young fellow, and of course I didn't have, you know, I didn't have an answer. So I think this is a matter which our, you know, leaders must look carefully about, because of course the Gen Zs are saying even if both of them go, it's good. You know, they don't, you know, because, you know, they say it's good. But I think there is the stability which is required so that, you know, we do things in the constitutional way, in the legal way, in whatever, you know, right way. But for this accountability, so that when you do wrong things, you are not above the law, and you can, you know, be impeached, you can be recalled. For impeachment, it is necessary to have that impeachment law, because now they're just using the Constitution, and the Constitution is a skeleton. So we need that law which they've been postponing. And actually the reason they were postponing it was, you know, when I used to be in government, they said that if you have an impeachment law, the president could get impeached. So because of that, they put a brake on this impeachment law, which would now give the proper threshold, the grounds, you know, the whole process, so that it is a fair process. So I think that is something that has to be done. And then political hygiene, so that we begin to grow our institutions and we begin to respect them and respect ourselves, so that we don't regress to, you know, the 1990s and the 1880s and those dark days. You know, because if you take our country there, the country can't be taken there. The country is saying, and the young people are saying, that shouldn't happen, that can't happen. This is a country, like my brother was saying, you know, even these foreigners are coming here, like the Dutch, you know, to do health things. They can't go to a country which has no promise. So we have promise, and we need to appropriate that promise, and we need to protect these young people of ours. And so I think there has to be a sea change and for, particularly the executive, the, parliament, even us in the county, the people in the county, to really take matters forward according to our constitution, our laws, and because that's where there's safety.
Okay. And Dr. Ari, if this goes through, are we setting a new precedence in this country where now even lifestyle audits are now important? Because some of the accusations that they are a mashing of wealth in quick succession, a lot of wealth at the same time. Something you'd think even the EACC and the DCI would be involved in it, but they've not been involved so far. Will this, if it goes through to the end, will it set a new threshold for all the leaders to be held accountable towards? Or is this just a political expediency issue? Once it's done, we forget about it and move on?
Yeah, so if it goes through, then it means that Gachagua has set a benchmark for all those things, whether we are following the law or not. Okay, then it means I can always wake up morning and say, Trevor, you have amassed so much wealth, so we're impeaching you. And so you cannot run away from it if this Gachagua case becomes the precedent setting. Then it's actually, for me, in a way, I think it's dangerous, especially if we are not, because it's going to be a possibility of people just to be lynched. If I don't like you or I disagree with you politically, then I just come with some wishy-washy grounds like the ones in the case of Gachagua, then we should be able then to expect an avalanche of impeachments on hopefully as many leaders as possible. And I don't think even the president himself, assuming that his side of the divide is actually the one sponsoring this, as people are saying, then he should also be ready to be impeached. Because what will stop, for example, an MP to come up with a similar charge sheet to Gachagua, because then Gachagua will have set a president, but in my view, a very bad president that's not founded, well founded in law, and even the constitution. The threshold is not there. It's not so clear. Some of these things they are saying he has done, really, it's a matter of evidence. Where is the evidence? Even at face value, if I look at some of those things. So it will set for me a very bad precedent. If it goes through, then we should expect to impeach as many people as possible.
Okay. And Prof,
and maybe that is the saving grace when members of parliament watered down Article 104 of the Constitution on recall clause, because they passed a law that made it almost impossible for members of the public to recall a sleeping member of parliament, a member of parliament who is not able to represent them. And the same way, they passed a law that actually killed Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, the hygiene in politics that Prof was talking about. So if that's how we are going to be shallow in matters impeachment and trial on real issues, on accountability, because when we talk about accountability in this particular case, we must be able to predicate it against what? What has been the offensive thing done by this man? Now we are asking him to account. Like Prof was saying, if it was a question of money, we should have started with a criminal complaint to begin with. Let's create a situation where we kind of build evidence. But if you're going to be this shallow, as I think this charge sheet is, and I'm not excusing the impeachment of anybody, but it has to be very solid, so that then tomorrow it's not just me disliking you, Trevor, and saying, let me impeach Trevor. The president is likely to be very dangerous because it is not solidly anchored in law or the Constitution. Of course, they have never passed the impeachment law, deliberately so, as Prof has explained. But now on the Constitution, only just Article 150, sub-Article 2, it says gross misconduct upon committing crimes in national or international law. Again,
Prof, looking at this political situation we are in right now, do we have time to course correct? And what will that look like? Because there's quite a number of people complaining, as people are saying that even this discussion we're having now is irrelevant to them. They are dealing with much more serious issues, education issues, health issues. They want that addressed first before what we're talking about now. Does the government have time to course correct so that it heads in the right direction? And what would that shift look like?
I think really governments are supposed to listen to what their citizens are saying, particularly the most critical things like my brother has said in terms of the issues of the moment, whether it is from high cost of living, the university education, the health, the new health, all those issues. And since the inception of the government, I think because of lack of proper concentration many things that are proposed are being challenged, and they are not coming to fruition, whether it's the housing levy, you know, whether it is even the universal health care. So I think the government needs to take a deep breath and say, why aren't these things that we are proposing from the initial Kenya Kwanza plan, why are they not working when we try to implement them? You know, even now, I think for devolution, the governors have not received money since the beginning of the financial year. You know, so they are really struggling, and they are struggling. So I think this is 2024. 2025 is really the year to kind of try to correct, and the government to take a deep breath and say that how can, you know, all the sectors be involved in terms of getting what must be done to be done. Okay. And this political noise or political issues, those ones are put in the back burner, so that the government focuses on whatever is critical. Okay. Because if the government doesn't do that, and if those who are in leadership want to succeed in 2027, then they will realize that they can't use the church because the church is afraid of being used again. If you have alienated some of the ethnic groups that you used, you can't use them again. If you're making new ones, you don't know how that will go. So it will mean that now you must use force and money, and that creates problems. So that is why this reset is so critical, so that we actually have like this national conversation we all the time. Even it was promised before, a real national conversation. Okay. We are here. We have these problems, even the public debt. What now do we do? And I think the president, because he's the president, has to accept. And even these young people, you know, the young people, you know, they were killed and all that kind of stuff, that is still an issue that has not been addressed. So I really think that the religious sector, you know, they need to also put their voice, like used to happen during, you know, Njoya and Okulu and Dingi and all those kinds of people, so that we can stop our country from going down the drain. Okay. And one wishes, one wishes, Honorable Raila, you know, one wishes he had taken a different course.
You disagree with the course he's taking right now?
One wishes he had taken a different course.
But Trevor, you talk of reset. You know, the only person who can reset this country so that we don't have to go down that slippery road is William Ruto. And the only way he can do it is to save his deputy president.
But how will the relationship be after that?
Listen, as I said earlier,
the deputy president himself said that such a motion cannot find its way in the National Assembly without the sanctioning of the head of state. He said that
you know, the beauty of our country is that we are supposed to be religious people. We pray for everything. Before we eat, before we start insulting each other, we still pray. In churches, we pray. So I think the two people are prayerful people. If they truly read the Bible, you know, they then should be able to say, you know, my brother, I think we wronged each other. They can even offer a public apology to the country, by the way. And they can, I mean, and that I think will even cement, you know, the country, will bring the country together. They can say, I think this is a mistake. Just the same way we could clearly read, I mean, that National Assembly was actually influenced to pass this vote without thinking, without, you know, they have refused to listen to the views of the people, yet they are the ones who orchestrated this public participation. And the Supreme Court has since decided that public participation is just a mere thing. It must be seen to be meaningful. Those are the words. Meaningful public participation, where actually people engage, discuss even this memoranda. So I still believe that William Ruto can reset this country the right course, so that they go back to what Prof has said, that what are the promises that we made to Kenyans in 2022? How do we deal with the outcry now about this Adani, about health, about education, about insecurity, about all these things that are actually affecting us as a country?
Okay.
You know, and I saw that, Trevor.
Yeah.
I saw that in 2008, Kibaki and Raila, when there was trouble.
Exactly.
And, you know, they sat down. And, of course, there was prompting from, you know, some international people and so on. But I remember there were some people who were telling Kibaki, President Kibaki, you know, a guy I really love. They were telling him, don't listen. Don't listen. You know, we are going to be triumphant.
Yeah.
And he said that this country is bigger than you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and even if, you know, we are going to share the government, you know, let's do that and let's try, you know, to work together and resolve, because Kenya is bigger. So even in this instance, that can happen. And even the question you asked about, you know, when people, you know, if people are corrupt and all that kind of stuff, these wealth declarations that we keep on feeling, they should be made public. You know, they should be made public. If you are charged with corruption, there should be a time limit, 6 months. Even the president said so, 6 months, and the case is finished. Like presidential petition is 2 weeks, and small claims courts takes a short time. So there are things that can be done if, you know, when we really want, like that national conversation, what do we do to heal our country?
Okay. But Trevor, a quick one. If Raila and Ruto can work together, even travel together to as many countries, if we can even campaign for him in some of the countries, take him to China, take him to America. After all the kind of insults we heard from them, you know, Raila calling Ruto Mwizi, this and that, you know, Ruto calling him Mganga, Mchawi, and all those things. Those are very bad, and we watch them. One will imagine these people will never come together, but they've come together. Okay. Now under this broad-based government. All right. Now, Gachagua and Ruto, I don't seem to see a time when they really had a public altercation to the extent of Raila and Ruto. Surely it is not rocket science. Okay. Let Ruto now talk to, you know, assuming the court process will not proceed, they can even agree today that, you know, let's go back to factory setting. Where did we go wrong? And I think don't stress the country, because Kenyans are already stressed. People are committing suicide. You know, you are stressing us more with these politics that we don't.
And Fred Obachi Machoka, before we wind up, has a question for you, the blackest man in Black Africa, says those two guys there are part of the team of lawyers who drafted this constitution. Why were they not specific or clear on the rules managing impeachment? Ama wali create room for argument in these cases in court? Ndio wapate kakitu.
No, but you know, I think that point was covered in terms of, first of all, the constitution was made by very many people, you know, all the Kenyans and many stages. In actual fact, when he was in the commission, the committee of experts, they did 4 drafts, you know, with interventions from many people. And there was Baumas and there was many drafts. But I think the point that I wanted to make, it's a point which has already been made, that it was said in the Constitution that there will be a law to, you know, now give the detail to operationalize how impeachment should happen. And for county governments, it was very specific, and it didn't. Even the National Assembly had that law, a draft. Then they decided that a draft came from Senate. Then they decided that it had to be split, so that there was one for the national executive and another one for the counties. And up to now, nothing has happened.
So I want to tell my good friend Fred Obachi that he seems not to have read our first draft of November 2009, what we call the harmonized draft constitution of Kenya, which we published to the members of public. If you recall, that draft was so detailed, it was so prescriptive. And in constitution making, as my, you know, Prof actually taught me constitution law at the university back in the days. In constitution making, constitution making is actually a negotiated agreement, and there are compromises. So there is always a debate whether how long should it be, how short shall it be, is it only a set of values and principles? Those things always come to the table, depending on the society. So, and that's why for us as the committee of experts, we said, whenever we thought there are details that are needed, we need to engage the people's representatives to say that Parliament shall pass legislation to operationalize, meaning they can bring details. And I gave you 2 examples where Parliament has actually let down the people of Kenya. In Article 104, that is supposed to recall them. But they passed a law that made it almost impossible.
For their own sake.
For their own sake. In Chapter 6, to bring issues of integrity into holding public office. Again, they passed a law that actually made it almost impossible. So, Fred, this imambo in negotiation, and you have to decide.
And even the 2/3 gender rule.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
They have not again passed the facilitative law to make sure that happens. So,
all right.
It's not possible to put everything in a constitution, Trevor. That's what I'll tell Ombachi.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for making time. We ran out of time. And Dr. Kuru Kotado, Alliance Party leader, and Professor Kivutha Kibwana, former governor of Makueni, asanteni sana.
And current professor of law, Daystar University.
Current professor of law, Daystar University.
What a good way to retire, Prof.
Let's take a quick break. We're back with sports in just a bit. Thank you.